will be completely unique. And if you look at the information age now especially, and here it links in what Alan said before, what, a few hundred years ago, how many books were there on the market? Who could actually write a book? Who could actually get a book printed? Now we all can. There's a real difference there. So of course our books won't be unique. The subject won't be unique anymore. Almost every subject has been written about 100 times. But how you write it is absolutely unique to you. And that's what books today are about. They bring in the unique personality, your unique experience. And that's what makes that book different from the one which was written 2 weeks ago. It's you, in the current market. This might change again, but in the current market it is about you. And then Sylvia Plath said, and by the way, everything in life is writable about if you have the outgoing guts to do it and the imagination to improvise, and we'll talk about that later. So quite a few famous writers, except this one, who's not that famous, said something quite similar, that there is a book in you and you can write it and you can do it if you want to. But, so who me really, question mark, greater people than I have said, you, and you, and you. You especially, because you're very young still, and you have time. Exactly, all of you. Okay, so who me really? There are many, many choices and options what you can write about. And this whole talk cannot give you more than get you thinking, yeah, and looking for something. You can write books based on professional experience and expertise. You can write books based on your personal life and your life experiences. You can write books based on interest, on subjects you research, subjects you love, subjects you want to get into. I have spoken to a colleague, by the way, I'm a psychologist originally, so the shamanism came much later. I'm originally a very, very basic clinical psychologist, a therapist, and have long, long years in running a therapy college. So I spoke to a colleague of mine who has written 5 books on autism. And I said to her, how do you write 5 books and work full time? Because that's what she does. And she said, and I said, and where do you get all this knowledge from? And she said, I haven't got that knowledge. I get the knowledge while I research for my book. So there is books based on interest or on a subject you look into. They're quite good books because you research them. You don't know beforehand. You haven't got all that knowledge. And while you research, while you look deeper into something, then the book can come. Okay, there's fiction and storytelling, fiction writing. I don't want to talk about that tonight because I'm not a fiction writer. I work with somebody together who writes fiction stories and poems. I am not, but maybe one day. So poetry, and then of course we have combinations of all of those, and it is the combination books which at the moment sell. The books which are purely scientific or purely based on professional expertise do not sell as well as the books where your personal life comes in, where your personal experience is interwoven. I don't know if any of you have read Sheryl Sandberg's book. She's the CEO of, the women might have, the CEO of Facebook.
Facebook, yeah.
And before she was top there, Google. One of the few women who really made it to the top. And she has written a book which is really interesting called Leaning In. And it is a fantastic book. It's very short, but what she does beautifully, or what her editor helped her to do beautifully, we'll talk about that in a moment, about editing, is she interweaves her professional expertise and experience, whatever she experienced within the workplace in a very, very male tech environment, with her personal story and her interests in feminism and women. And it is beautifully interwoven with research. Almost everything she says, she underpins, she finds research, and she underpins it. And so that is partly because she has a big name, but also partly how the book is written, why it became an absolute bestseller. So the combinations are at the moment the ones which do sell. Now, who me really, I want to give you a few examples. A client of mine, the first one is called Aisha. The names have been changed. She's Asian. She's thinking at the moment of writing a book, or she's in the middle of it, and I do a bit of tutoring for her. She's Asian. Her siblings died when she was very young. She was 8 years of age. Her mother had a breakdown. She became a carer. After that, she married a guy out of the Asian community, European white guy. Marriage broke down. She became a single mother. She's a therapist, and she works with Asian women. If you look at this, how many books are in there? How many books in just that one life? Masses. Masses of books. No? And this is the problem many of us have, not to be able to make a decision. So if we want to write a book, we need to make a decision fairly early on, what we're actually writing about. No? So she writes something now about feels isolated because she lost her roots, about this Asian women being in between. She uses her therapist experience, but of course she weaves her own life into it. Yeah. Another guy, Richard, marketing manager, also name changed, guy who I know, marketing manager, boarding school, 5 children. He traveled the world with his wife at the age of 55. Now he has written a few books. 2 together with a colleague based on marketing skills. 1 about his boarding school experiences prompted by his therapy. And 1, which is really nice, about the late life travels, and I want to come to that, how to spend your children's inheritance, which is a nice title. Now, his first few books were all published by publishers. The last one, he self-published. And why did he do that? Very expensive book to publish. Photos, the whole lot. He wrote it together with his wife. Why did he do it? Because he wanted to leave a legacy. This last book is for his family and for his children. So, what I wanted to come to is that a book is a legacy. It's a legacy you leave. And I think that's why many of us have the urge to write a book. Coming back to the beginning when I said we all can write. And it is that leaving a legacy which is for many important. I come to motivation in a moment. Myself, I said for my whole life I need to write, and then of course my biggest excuse was this is not my language, as you might all hear. I'm writing in a foreign language. So I wrote hundreds of articles. I wrote courses, I wrote this, I wrote that, but I didn't write a book, because a book is, once it's in print, it's there. And everybody can criticize you. And I thought, it's not my language, I can't do it. Of course I can. Of course I can. Number 3 coming out, number 4 will be in the makings. Of course I can. No? But so, one needs to really have a look at one's life and at one's professional experience, and then have a look and begin to make a decision. So the first step really, if you ever want to write a book, which I would encourage you to do, is to make a decision. Otherwise you end up like me. You have 50,000 folders on your computer with very interesting stuff, which you have picked up from here and from there, and then you had a thought, and then you wrote yet another course, which I did many courses, and I thought, okay, I stored that course because that's really a good course, and one day I will get a book. And you have these 50,000 folders, and nothing ever happens. So from my experience, the first thing to do is really need to decide. Go from yes, no, maybe to a clear decision. Say no and put it out of your mind. or say yes. But stop doing, oh, maybe tomorrow, and maybe one day, and maybe. So make a decision, and then commit to it. So yes, I will write that book. Next, find what you want to write about. We can all journal forever, and ever, and ever. And then we die, and we leave a journal which nobody ever reads. Your children won't go through all of that stuff. They won't even go through all the pictures you have stored on computer, because there are thousands for most of us these days. So the idea is really, do decide what you want to write about. Now, as Grace said, my first book could have been 3 or 4 books, because I knew what I wanted to write about, and it's a fairly unique book, because it combines psychology and therapy with shamanism. It was the first one on the market on that subject. So it was relatively easy for me to write about something new, because it was not done before. But I made that decision. Now, I worked for about 15, 20 years as a trauma specialist, as a psychologist. Now, I knew much more about trauma. But I had done trauma. I didn't want to do any more trauma. You know, I case study after case study on trauma, and I didn't want to do it anymore, so I couldn't have written a book about it. I would have stopped halfway through. So define what kind of book you want to write, and your next step is really define a working title. A working title can change completely and utterly, but you need to have an idea where you're going with the thing. And your working title, publishers these days, they want the major buzzwords in the working title. So it needs, in your title, it needs to be there what you're actually writing about. This is because of search engines. We can't write these beautiful flowery books anymore. The butterfly flew away. That's a novel. If you write a more professional book, you need to have your terms in the title. So decide what you want to write about. Commit to it, and that will keep you on track. Step number 2, how to start, define your motivation. Why do you want to write? Why do you want to write a book? And you need to be brutally honest with yourself. Absolutely brutally honest. Not to write it because some people will benefit, or because I want to do this or that. Be brutally honest why you want to write a book, and because that will keep you going. And I have to thank a friend of mine who is actually not a friend, because I do find some of her ways of how she looks at the world and how she's completely self-centered quite frustrating, and I'm not a fan of that. But she said to me, she has written quite a few books, she said to me, be honest with yourself, why do you want to write this book? And what came up was I wanted recognition. Not because it would benefit my clients, and not because it was this or that. It was for me, I wanted professional recognition. And that motivation actually sustained me. While if you have an altruistic motivation which isn't true, it will not sustain you, because the writing process is not easy. It takes time and energy and focus. The second thing you need to do here, besides of being brutally honest with yourself, because it will sustain you, is to find something you really want to write about. I run some groups, mainly with women, about writing, and you know, lots of women or lots of people are in the same position I was in. They have a professional experience, many years, like I was with the trauma. And I have worked in trauma in other countries with really massive trauma. And I know a lot about it. But I just wasn't passionate about it anymore. So you're standing there thinking, oh, this is really what I should write about, because I know a lot about it. But if you're not passionate about it, you will not sustain it. So find something which really pulls your heartstrings, where you really think, yeah, this is good, I can do that. So define your motivation. What do I want to achieve? Be brutally honest with yourself. Most of us want recognition, or we want to leave a legacy. And then find the subject where you can put your passion into, rather than the subject you know most about. So you can write a more professional book. Number 3, show up and write. You need to treat, in the end, writing like an office job. Forget the whole idea about this muse which will come down from the ground and you have suddenly the inspiration and here the book flows out of you. It doesn't. It doesn't flow out of you. Writing is like every other job. And there's a famous book called The Art of War, or The War of Art, which actually motivated me no end. This is a very famous, I'd forgotten the name, a very famous script.
Pressfield.
How's it called?
Stephen Pressfield.
That's the one. That's the one. Say it louder so that...
Stephen Pressfield.
That's the guy. He wrote a book called The War of Art. And he writes how for years and years and years, and many years, he couldn't get, what did he write, film scripts? No? Yeah, he couldn't get his film scripts filmed, basically. He had to write a film script because you want to make a film out of it. And still he learned to show up every day. He says if you have an office job and you don't show up, the job won't get done, and that's the same with writing. So basically treat the creative process of writing, and it is a creative process, as you would treat any other job you want to get done. You need to show up and do it. Woody Allen said 80% of success is showing up. And Dan Poynter said if you wait for inspiration to write, you are not a writer, you're a waiter. And he's so right. So besides of defining your motivation, finding a title, really clearly what you want to write about, show up. And even if you only do an hour every day, but show up, do it. So and that leads me to step 4. As I said, it's entitled Everyone Has a Book in Them and How to Start Writing It. So this is all about how to start writing it. Step 4 is you have to set your priorities. Esther Freud, daughter of good old Freud, said, find your best time of the day for writing and write. Don't let anything else interfere. Afterwards, it really won't matter to you that the kitchen is a mess. It really doesn't matter. Once you have that book in your hand, it doesn't matter whether your kitchen was a mess in 3 weeks or 3 months. It really doesn't matter. It's a fantastic product. Those of you who have written a book know it. It's a fantastic feeling to have it in your hand. You know what went into it, the time, the sweat and the tears, and there it is. And it will be republished and republished and republished, and it makes you money. It comes in trips and drops and trips and drops, year in, year out, year in, year out. You put the effort it wants. So it has its advantages. Or Stephen King says when asked, how do you write? 1 word at a time. So you really need to sit down. But there's no sense in sitting down when you're all over the place. You really need to define what you want to write about, have a working title, stick to it. The first draft is never the last one, it's never perfect. But write, write and write. Okay, so you must really prioritize writing and find out which rhythm works for you and stick to it. In The War of Art, he says he writes in the morning. He does a quick meditation, calls in his muse. I would advise you that, but that goes a bit too deep. He goes into a notice pad, he writes in the morning, then he has lunch, then he goes for a walk, and then he comes back and edits what he has written. You need to find a rhythm for yourself. For me, the only thing worked, I cleared my calendar at the end for 3 months. I worked all the way before, and I did the research, and when I puzzled about with it, and then I cleared my schedule for 3 months, and I did not have a social life. Nothing. I said, made up to and finished the book in 6 months. The first one, it was a big book, very highly referenced and so on. So you must prioritize it. Right. So once you have started, you need to confront your excuses, and there will be many, and many and many. I know it from our gorgeous Grace, who had that book on her computer for the last 5 years and finally decided to push it out. No? We all find excuses. My big one was, this is not my language. How can I write in a foreign language? And it takes double the time to write in a foreign language, because to speak in a foreign language is easy. But once you have it on paper, you start criticizing yourself, left, right, and center. Is that right? Is the grammar right? Have I said that right? It's a nightmare in the head. So that was my excuse. So the most famous excuses are writer's block, time restraint, and lack of inspiration. They all excuses. There is no writer's block. Writer's block doesn't exist. You stare at an empty piece of paper and you just write words down. And you throw the piece of paper away afterwards, but you have written. So writer's block is an excuse. What usually underlies these excuses is really, and that's worth looking at, is self-belief issues. They will come in. They will come in. And you just must put them aside. Just say the editors can deal with it. You know, just keep going. Questioning the subject and material will come in as well, because, as I said in my examples, we can write about a lot. So you question it. All the programming. Oh, I had a lot of that. I come from a very working class background, you know. Kind of, don't climb too high, you might fall very low, you know. From that to kind of lots of other stuff. It will come in. Time pressure due to not setting priorities. That's a famous one for people who work full-time, also for mothers and for women who think that it's really more important to do the washing up than write that book. What? Really? Listen to yourself there. I do it all the time. It's more important to make a cup of tea. What? Really? No? So we need to listen to ourselves and really hear ourselves, what we're using as excuses. We can't see the finishing line, that's normal. You cannot see the finishing line of the book. You need to write chapter after chapter after chapter. And perfectionism and fear of not being good enough. So question those. I can't go deeper into, but don't use them as reasons to give up. They will all show up. They show up for every writer. Have I got another 3-4 minutes?
Carry on.
So, how to continue when all of this starts to happen? Show up and keep writing. Neil Gaiman said, this is how you do it. You sit down at the keyboard and you put one word after another until it's done. It's that easy and it's that hard. And really it is. From my experience, it really, really is. John Steinbeck, abandon the idea that you're ever going to finish. Lose track of the 400 pages and write just 1 page each day. Then when it gets finished, you will be very surprised. So this is how you write. Don't see the big thing. Margaret Atwood, one of our most famous novelists, said, if I waited for perfection, I would never write a word. So writing is really about writing and about nothing else in the end. And this is the quote which worked for me, and my partner will say that to you. This is what I have on my desk. It's Nelson Mandela, who says it always seems impossible until it's done. And imagine how impossible it must have felt for him, 27 years in prison. And he still did it. And it does feel impossible at times. And you just must keep going. And this is not long enough tonight to tell you more about how to get publishers and blah, blah, blah. But I just wanted to give you an idea of how it really works. It works, and I can put that on the Facebook group, that little slideshow, because it really works like this, that you have to make a decision, you have to state clearly what motivates you. You need a working title, otherwise you will just write forever and all over the place. You need to understand that you have a story to tell, and if you can combine that story with your professional experience and with some research, you have a book. And remember, this book will not be the first on the subject in the information age that cannot be anymore. This is a unique you. This is coming from your angle and from your experience and from your knowledge. And that makes it a unique book. And then look at the excuses and keep writing. And remember Nelson Mandela, it always seems impossible until it's done. And that's exactly how it feels. And one day it's done, and it's a fantastic feeling when you have got it in your hands. Any questions? Have we got a moment? I have had 35 minutes.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
30 is our
Just 5 minutes less drinking time for everybody.
Oh, yeah, that's good. No, I'm not. I don't want to be guilty of that. Okay, any questions? Anything you would like to know?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You got yourself down saying you're not good enough.
Yeah.
But when you finish it and you put it out there, and then you get everyone else saying the same thing, with all the agents and all the publishers saying,
Okay, it's a very good question.
Can you repeat the question, Christa?
What happens if you put a book out there and you can't get a publisher and they all say it's not good enough?
because you've had to fight your own stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is tough. Now, the best answer to that question is, you remember the 12 publishers? 12 who rejected Rowland's book? Harry Potter? 12 of them?
I heard it was 144 for that chicken soup. So
Yeah, but imagine it. They all thought she's not good enough. And this is crap. And now it has become the most sold book in the world now. So, but to answer your question quite clearly, I personally could not write a whole book without having a publisher. I had my contracts beforehand. So I could not bring up the motivation and put in the time and the work it takes without having a publisher. So for those of you who want to avoid that situation that you write a whole book and then you put it out there and nobody buys it, you need to get a contract before. I can only work with a contract because I'm a deadline worker. I need that deadline of a contract and then I can focus. Otherwise, I find too many excuses, yeah? Like cooking the dinner, earning some money, doing this, doing that. Publishers, and I don't want to go too deep into it. Publishers, every publisher has certain areas where they specialize in, so you need to look for the right publisher. They also have on the website, if they don't want you to have an agent, yeah, but the ones who still take manuscripts, they have on the website precisely what they want from you. Usually it's a content page, 400 to 2,000 words depending of content, what you want to write about, and 1 or 2 chapters. No? So that saves you a heck of a lot of time.
you just do that.
You do that. I do that. I mean, I'm not going to write a whole book and not having a publisher. The other option is, of course, self-publishing. Then you can write a whole book, you publish it via FreeXpace, Amazon or something, or you pay somebody to publish it for you. It's a few £100, no? And you push it out there. There are advantages and disadvantages on both, so we can't go too deep into it. But to avoid that, really don't write a whole book, get a contract.
I think with the advances in technology now, if anybody has written a book, they can get it published. It's very easy to publish a book now.
Yeah.
And loads of people who are now best-selling authors started off by publishing their own work. And then, once it was popular, then it was picked up by a publisher.
Yeah. So you can always self-publish if you want to avoid that. No.
Yeah.
What you don't have, of course, if you self-publish, is the editing the publisher gives you. No. I mean,
Well, you can pay an editor before you publish
You can pay an editor,
Yeah.
but then you are starting to lash out about
Yeah.
£1,000 beforehand, and you never know if you get it back. Then you need to be very clear what you want to put out there for. If it's a legacy you want to leave and you want to spend some money, fine. No? if you want to have no